to just talk to you purely about the humanities, because let's show of hands again, how many of you are working in humanities? Okay, so it's a small percentage, and I think I've actually met with some of you individually. The goal is really to show you how your field also can merge into the humanities for funding from that point of view. Okay, so I'm hoping that you'll keep your mind open and not say, well, I'm a scientist, I'm a mathematician, I'm an economist, I'm whatever. So this doesn't really apply to me. Well, economy is part of the humanities, but if you can keep an open mind, I think you'll be surprised at what gets funded that's considered humanities related. So according to the Center for the Humanities and the Public Sphere, and this is a new center here on campus. I think it's about 3 years old or 4 years old. Can everyone see this? This is the definition of humanities topics and areas. I'm just going to let you read that. So in your field, let's say you're in chemistry and you're in science, anything that relates to the history of science is considered humanities. Anything that relates to the ethics of science and math, etc., or experimentation, anything that deals with the economy of that specific topic. Do you see how then the two are enmeshed? And I talked to the digital humanities librarian, Lori Taylor, who works here at the Digital Library Center, and I asked her, so how would you define humanities? And she said, it's everything. Because really, it is everything. It depends on how you look at it. So I just wanted to give you a sense of how many sources, or just some key sources for humanities funding. And if you don't know, you should know that the Fulbright Scholars Program or the Fulbright Students Program is an important way to get funding for your projects. And as long as you're doing community building, or you're bringing together people who don't normally work together, or you're doing this research, you can do your science research or your math research, and you can build community at the same time, or you can build a service project within a community. So those are really important grant projects to go after, fellowship funding for you individually. On the library's LibGuide that has the grant seeking, you can find several videos and tutorials on the Fulbrights, and I don't know if you've gone over that. But. So National Endowment for the Arts is purely arts, but it's also how to use the arts in education to teach science, to teach math. So again, whenever you're looking at education, you're in the humanities. National Endowment for the Humanities is the major funder of humanities programs in this country. The problem with it is that they keep getting cut. Congress keeps cutting the NEH. They're also cutting the NEA. And many years ago, I think it's about 20 years ago, there was a whole conflict with the type of art that the National Endowment for the Arts was funding. I don't know if any of you remember that or have studied that, but artists were put under kind of restriction with the type of work that they could do. It was the first time that national perspective and grant reviewers were told, these are the things you cannot fund due to profanity or due to other issues that became social issues and for commerce. The National Science Foundation funds tons of educational programs, and they also fund ethics programs. So if you think of the National Science Foundation as just a funder for pure science, then you're really limiting yourself. They fund lots and lots of humanities-related work, and NSF has a lot more money than NEH does. So if you can figure out how to spin your program or infuse your program with educational elements, or look for those humanities-related topics within the National National Science Foundation websites, you will be successful at finding them. NHPRC is this very unusual agency. These are all government agencies over here. It's the National Historic Preservation Records Commission. And they're in the business of protecting documents and making sure that more and more people can see the photographs and hidden collections that are hidden in museums and archives all over the country. So that's a really important funder of the humanities. The Institute of Museum and Library Services has all kinds of funding for museums and for libraries and for library partnerships. And we're going to share with you today an unusual project that we just submitted on the Panama Canal, which is the Panama Canal, would you consider that an engineering marvel? So again, it's science, engineering, math, and humanities. State and local government agencies have tons of money for the humanities, but you have to know where to look. So for instance, there's the Division of Cultural Affairs in Tallahassee. Every state, most states, I think except for either Missouri or Mississippi, that actually annihilated their Division of Cultural Affairs, so they decided not to fund any arts and culture in their state. But Florida has historically been one of the highest funders of arts and culture in this state. And what that means is that it's purely programs that they're funding. They want to make sure that our country has a strong cultural program, just like the National Endowment for the Arts, and that comes from tax dollars. I wanted to make a comment here about Japan. Most people don't know that in Japan, the government funds what's called national treasures. They're very interested in funding culture for culture's sake, to make sure that master artists survive and are well cared for, and then can pass on that lineage to other artists, and that's another form of humanities funding. The NIH has tons of educational programs and partnerships for educating communities about health-related issues. So again, they also have humanities-related funding. And then I've listed here a list of primary funders for the humanities. And either it's social causes that they fund, open societies that they fund. Most people don't know about community foundations. These are private entities. Community foundations are located in most counties in this country, and they fund lots of humanities programs. So the first thing I would do if I were in a community and I were interested in getting some funding for educational purposes or for changing people's lives, I would look at the community foundation. Another one would be the United Ways or community chests that are available throughout the country. Again, you think of those as being serving people in poverty, serving people through food and shelter, etc. But they go way beyond that by funding partnerships and creative solutions that are not direct service. And Newman's Own Foundation, again, another socially conscious foundation that funds the humanities as well as direct service. So here are the various types of funding that you can get for humanities-related projects. Beyond research, which is something that you would be aware of, direct services and programs where you're actually providing a change for people that affects them, affects their quality of life. You can also create demonstration models where you put two entities together that maybe have never worked together for a humanities project. Fellowships, digitization projects are really important in the humanities to make sure that we can broaden access to publications or documents that are important that aren't seen. Preservation, conservation, and there are a lot of creativity and collaboration, creative collaboration projects that are now being funded by a lot of entities that also fall into the humanities. So I wanted to give you some examples of what the library has done to, and also one other funder, or one other agency that I've worked with. So this is a project, it's funded through NSF, and it's here at the University of Florida. So we're creating 3 games that basically will help students and faculty understand what is plagiarism and how to avoid it. And it's not a black and white situation, it's a gray situation, so you have to understand the different aspects of how plagiarism could affect you in your work and in your research. This was funded through the NSF Ethics Directorate, and the partners are the library and the librarians in the Mattson Library who have been teaching ethics and involved with student issues where a student gets in trouble for plagiarizing and then has to get to tutoring and to go to tutorial sessions, etc. And the Digital Worlds Institute, which is part of the College of Fine Arts. And we're creating electronic games where students would play and consecutively get harder and harder, more difficult examples of how to deal with plagiarism and what your options would be. So you have to learn the rules and then you have to apply them. And this is now going to be available to colleges all over the country because it's an open source software and anyone can adapt it to their own institution. Can you see where this would be a humanities project? But it's funded by the National Science Foundation. So this was another project that we did. It's a historic perspective and digitization project of all of the aerial photography that we could get our hands up on between 1930 and the present time. So the government funded airplanes to fly over the state of Florida and take pictures of different counties and different regions. So we got that film and digitized it and created an interface so that you could research, say you were interested in the development of Orlando over a period of time and how it changed from being kind of an empty wasteland into this concrete jungle that we have at Disney World. Well, you could view a series of photographs of that specific county by going to this site. This was funded by the state archives, and again, it's not purely humanities, it's humanities and the sciences mixed together, and architecture and community development and a whole bunch of other topics. This is the Baldwin Library of Children's Literature. How many of you know that we have here at UF one of the largest collections of children's literature in the United States? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The other wonderful aspect about this is that about 5,000 of these books were digitized and they're out of copyright. So you can actually go in and take an image of, say, the 3 Kittens story. It's this beautiful illustration and use it for a poster without having any issues with copyright. So we took many of those books, over 5,000, and we put them online. But this project was to catalog them because we have over 100,000 volumes and virtually nobody knew what we had. So over a series of 3 grants from the National Endowment for the Humanities, we were able to catalog almost all of the books that are in the Baldwin collection so that now anyone in the world can find what we have here at UF. Another example of a humanities project, I think the total ended up being slightly over $1 million to do all of that work, and it took about 7 years. And this was an example I think I talked about in the collaboration class. The effect of public garden visitation on older adults with depression. So the idea was, go to the Moody County Museum and have this experience and determine whether deliberately going to a garden would change someone's health. And in the future, could doctors write a prescription to buy a membership at a garden? And then give the remedy would be this patient would go to this garden and have a specific experience and have a specific activity that would change their health or improve their health. and they proved that that was correct. So this was one of the projects that I was working on. Again, humanities mixed with science and health, a partnership with the Florida Atlantic University Nursing School and a museum. And the last example I have is an NIH project, building collaboration. I don't know, how many of you know about the Vivo project? Okay, it's an international project that was based here at UF, and a project, a partnership between the libraries and some folks in biomedical engineering and health. And it created this network, this international network of scientists, so that you could find out which scientists here at UF or around the world are studying or researching the same topics that you're studying or researching. But beyond that, all of the faculty were asked to participate in this. And I think that it's ongoing, and the libraries had a role in setting up this software and testing it over a 2-year period. And the funding for the libraries, just for the libraries, was over $2 million. So again, that's an NIH project, but it was in the humanities with libraries, training, etc., of facilitation of these relationships. So those were the examples that I wanted to give you. Does this help give you a sense that we're not talking about purity in grant seeking? You have to think of your project and all of the beneficiaries and all of the ways that you're changing people's lives. And there could be a humanities component to your project. You just have to look for it. And it will be there if you think creatively. So we have a little project, am I good on time? Where I'd like you to divide up into groups of about 7 people. And we're going to hand out 3 abstracts. So before we do that, and I'll give you the instructions now, and then you move into your groups and we'll do the handout. Does that sound good? Okay, so you're going to have 3 abstracts for 3 different projects, humanities related. And I want your group to decide which project they would fund. So you're going to read all 3. They're all from different programs. They're all different. And I just want one sentence that gives me the reason or shares with the group why you chose that abstract or that project as being the best. Okay, so they're going to be different, but I want your group to come up with one sentence. So basically one concept that says the reason we picked this project was because of X. Okay? So go ahead and try to find groups of 7.
Office of Research, sponsored research for the university, and I manage the Office of Award Administration. Usually I speak last, but because we're under a deadline in my office and we're short-staffed, it's right before spring break, so we too are short-staffed. I'm going to speak first and then maybe stay as long as I can before I have to get back. When you are funded with a research project, wherever it is, at your institution, you will have an office that will manage the project for you. That's what my office does. We are technically the conduit between the funding agency and this PI and the department and the research that goes on and the collaboration that goes on with it. When it arrives, it has to be set up for, as my director says, spendable dollars. You get a piece of paper, and basically that piece of paper says, whether it's from the National Humanities, National Endowment for Humanities, National Institute of Health, National Science Foundation, we award you in the amount of $500,000. Well, in order for you to be able to spend that money, it has to be set up in an account, separate, because that's one of the first rules of grant accounting, grant management, is you do not commingle funds. So your grant would be set up just for you, and it would have its own project number. And your grant would be set up just for you, and it would have its own project number, and they can mix and match. Because one of the first things auditors are going to want to see is that you have separate accountability for your projects. Actual accounting, okay? Now, responsible for actually setting up the paperwork that goes to the accounting offices that will establish the accounts for you to speak. We work in collaboration with the departments. Mattson is one of our colleagues that we work with very closely. She works in the department of entomology, and when her PIs get grants, she works with us to make sure we have all the information we need, and we take that information, we transfer it to an internal document that we call our notice of award. Funding agencies usually call theirs NGAs, Notice of Grant Awards. We call ours Notice of Awards, or Notice of Official Accounting. And we send those down to the accounting office so they can be set up for you to be able to spend. When you have your grant, someone has to, as I was saying to Dr. Daniels a little bit earlier, somebody has to cross the T's and dot the I's. It's the bureaucracy of the management of the program. And that's what we do. You have to do the research and the science, and you don't want to spend your time worrying about all the details, if you will. And that's what we help you with. When you receive your grant, the actual repository for that grant, the official repository, is considered the Office of Research, or the Office of Sponsored Research, whatever it's called at your institution. It is the official record for the project. The official repository is the University of Florida, not you, technically. Because when the grant is said and done and over, and you have moved on to bigger and better things, if there is an audit question, that question comes to the University of Florida, and we have to answer it. So one of the things I always tell our PIs and our prospective PIs, learn who your departmental person is, learn who your collaborator is in your Office of Research, and get to know them and be honest with them and let them know what you're working with and what you have a problem with, because they will help you interface with the agency, because each agency will come with its own set of rules and regulations. Some of them will let you do things, they will just give you a pot of money and say, at the end of this, tell us how you spend it. Some of them will send you rules and regulations that will say, you send us a budget, spend within that budget. If you move between that budget more than 25%, we want to know about it. Our office will help you interface with the agency so you get approval for those things. Does this make any sense to y'all? Does it help? Okay, does anybody have any questions at this point? Okay, yes, sir.
Does each individual department in the university have a person that handles the grants?
That's a very good question. It's college and departmental decided. Right now, actually, the university is undergoing a huge initiative to go into a shared services center. Right now, most departments on the campus have their own grants people. Due to budgetary concerns, the university is looking at a shared service center. For instance, Judy and I were talking about it on the way over here. We just saw the plan that is in place for the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences to go into a shared service center where the departmental people will no longer be housed in each department, and they will be actually internal to them, okay, right over here. That plan of action is going into place in the next 18 months to 24 months. It goes in cycles, depending on budgetary restraints, but for instance, down, as we say, down the hill, which is College of Medicine. I don't know how many of you are from medicine or from in the sciences, medical sciences. They have their own grants offices. Most of those departments have their own grants people. Okay? So it's college and department decided, but the university's been very lucky. We've had many departments that can have their own grants people, but because of budgetary constraints right now, we're seeing a change and a shift in that, which will have an effect on all of us, So, any questions, any other? Judy, anything I'm missing? Yes.
Would you mind going over a little bit about reporting, both financial and narrative reporting?
Every grant that is funded has rules that will tell you how to report back to the agency. There's at least 3 different kinds of reports. Technical reports, financial reports, and then at the end, there's what are usually invention reports. So, some grants will want quarterly reports, some grants will want annual reports, some grants won't even want a report until the end of the project, which may be annual, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. For instance, most of your NIH funding comes in and is either 3 to 5 years. All they ask for, most of them, is on an annual basis, send them a progress report, give them an update, how things are going, tell them if you are expecting to have more than 25% of your money left over at this time. If you do, why? And why is your, as we say, run rate not going as quickly as you thought it was? And then they will send you the funding for the next year. NSF does the same thing, send them a progress report on an annual basis. They usually don't ask about money at that time. 3 years later, or 5 years, however long it is, they want a progress report, they want a final financial report, and they want an invention report, which tells them if you invented anything, if you're planning on filing any patents, because the government wants to know about that. When you get your award document, an excellent point is that you should read the award document so you know what is expected of you, because each agency will have different requirements. Some agencies, I don't want to say they're loose with their money, but they expect you to do what they ask you to do and then to let them know at the end. Some agencies micromanage, and those that micromanage are very difficult for everyone to work with, from the financial standpoint, from the administrative standpoint, and from the science standpoint, because you will be required to spend a lot of time making sure they are satisfied with the reporting that has been done. A case in point, just to let you know, we had a $1.3 million grant over the last 3 years for a research effort through the state, through Department of Health. PI was submitting progress reports on an annual basis. What we did not know in our office was that the agency was not really happy with the progress, because the agency was communicating back to PI, but wasn't going through us, so we didn't know this. This ties back to keep your administrative office informed. Final report time came. They completed the final report, sent it in, and then our office got a scathing letter that they weren't happy with the progress, and they weren't happy with the reports, and they weren't happy with what they had been provided over the last 3 years. And we just sat there with, I don't want to say with egg on our face, but we're like, uh-oh, who did what, or who didn't do what? Now where do we go? So we're actually in the throes right now of working back and forth with the agency and with the PI. The PI has resubmitted his report. As you said earlier when you were talking about reading the abstracts, and you said they were well written. One of the problems with the report, the final report, it was not written well. And they weren't happy, so he had to redo it. He's redone it twice. Because what we're negotiating now is trying to make sure they're happy with what they get, so that we don't have to send them any money back. Because he spent all the money. But if they're not happy, they can come back and say, we want $300,000 of this back. We don't have to give it back. By we, I mean DSR. It's the PI and the department's responsibility. So, in that, I see somebody kind of laughing. It can get kind of hairy at the end. So, this ties back in with the situation with 1, write it well. 2, do what you're supposed to do. 3, if you're in the middle of it and you realize things aren't going well, get in touch with your research office and let them know so they can start playing go-between with you and your agency, and we can set things up and maybe take care of it. It's a lot easier to take care of it in the middle of it or in the beginning than it is to do it when it questions or anything? Yes, sir.
So regarding that, it isn't actually that the state of that happens, your reports will require money back.
I'm hard to hear you. I'm sorry.
So you're saying that agencies that are not happy with the reports will require money back?
Yes, it can.
So what, that seems pretty subjective to the agencies that are not happy. Is there any protection
Yes.
for the person when they receive a grant? So that, like, that doesn't happen? Like,
Yeah.
how does that work?
What I always recommend, as many years as I've done this, the best protection is communication. I always recommend to our EIs and our departmental people, I'm talking about communicating with us, but I also say communicate with your program officer. If this EI had only picked up the phone the first time he got his letter from the agency that said they weren't happy with that progress report, because as best I can tell, all he did was kind of set it off to the side and like, oh, I'll take care of this later. If he had picked up the phone and called his program person that sent that letter, he said, I'm sorry, I thought I had prepared for you what I was supposed to. What are you looking for? And maybe I'm just not communicating it well enough to you so that you understand. Because apparently, from what I can tell, the science is solid. And that's where we're at a loss, because we aren't science people. We are bureaucrats. And we don't do science. But as best I could tell, the science was there. But this person at the agency was looking at the science and was not happy with what they were seeing. So it was a communication thing between the program person and the PI. So one of the things I always tell our PIs is communicate with your program officer at the agency. Because there's usually two people at the agency you want to be friends with. One is your program officer, and that's the person that determines whether you get funded. That's your science person. Then there's your administrative officer. That's the person that makes sure all the rules are covered from the management standpoint. And you want to make sure they're the ones that make the decision as to how the money gets moved around. So you want to be in communication with both of them. And feel free to do that. I always recommend that. Because I think Dr. Daniels will tell you, if you have communication and a rapport with your agency, not only does your project move smoother, but then you're on their radar for future funding and for networking and for whatever happens in the future. So that's what I would recommend. But yes, an agency always has the right to pull back money. Just because they've decided to give it to you doesn't mean they can't take it back, which is a scary thought. Yes.
The other part too is the seriousness of it. If it's not the other part, the other part to this is the seriousness of it. If you don't do your reports, you don't do the science, you maintain that relationship, not only can they ask for funds back, they can debar you, which is a terrifying word if you're a faculty member and to a university, because this happens with federal government more than I would say state. But if you're debarred, that means as an individual, there's either a period of time or your lifetime, you will no longer be able to receive funds from that particular agency. And it may be just an agency, it may be the federal government, and I've seen some faculty come close to being debarred on projects that they were not handling as well as they should have and did not have the communication going on with DSR and the agency and the faculty. It takes a lot of effort to resolve these problems and not be debarred, so maintain that relationship and communication.
I think one of the interesting ones I ever saw was, and I haven't seen it in a while, but a PI was delinquent on his or her final report. And I think, I cannot recall the agency, but we get a lot of funding from different agencies. Our office is responsible for making sure the final reports have been submitted, and I have a person in my office that actually handles closeout reports. So we have been trying to communicate with this PI for over a year. They're looking for the report, and we kept getting these answers back. I'll get to it. I'll get to it over spring break. We actually had that. I'll get to it over summer. I'll get to it over fall. This went on and went on. Then we got a letter from the agency. They said, well, this is fine. We've tried for 12 months and get the report. until the university submits the report, all funding to the university from our agency is suspended. All the other PIs. So that was a very interesting phone call to make to the PI that was not doing his report, was to say, until you get a report, no one else gets funded. But the interesting phone call, the most interesting, was the one to the PI that was looking for their funding, and it wasn't coming, and we just simply said, because Dr. X has not done his report. So it was the, we used the, I don't know what word to say, but
Peer pressure.
peer pressure, thank you, that's what I was trying to think. We used peer pressure, okay? If we can't get it, we're just gonna tell your friends that they can't get theirs because you didn't do yours. And we had it within about a week. Amazing. So, amazing. So, about any kind of situation we can think of from an interpersonal dynamic, we can deal with it. And we do deal with it. Because it is about people. It's all about making sure that everyone does what they're supposed to do, because it is a team effort. And it is a domino effect. From you to your department, to your management, to your agency, everything is all interlinked and all is in a domino. And one thing can go wrong and it just goes right down the line. So always feel free to communicate with your departments and your research office. Okay? Thank you very much.
So when you have your proposal and you're looking for at least grants and you have an idea and you go out, I'm your first person that you usually end up coming to once you found an agency and you want to begin it. This is just a quick process of the overview. You would come to me with your proposal, then your proposal, once it's packaged, would end up going to your deans to be signed off and approved. And then it goes over to DSR, to Judy Harris's office. And then if you're lucky and it gets awarded, then it moves over to Teel's office. And then on to grants and contracts. And that's where Judy said that you would receive your funding and be able to spend funds. I'm not going to read all the slides. You can just go over them. Again, deadlines are very important. Right now, we're in an NIH deadline. And we have proposals due on Monday. I can tell you they are coming in fast and furious. If you will work on your proposals in advance, it's very helpful. When you get near the end, you actually can jeopardize your project if it has technical issues and it's not been received in time for review. And Judy can probably tell you, many times there are proposals that we do submit, but there's the option to have the proposal pulled. If it's not as it should be. We don't want you to miss an opportunity, but it can be pulled. And while DSR suggests 10 days in advance for NIH, it's not happening. I can tell you that. But if you send it in ahead, let me tell you, you'll have a better proposal going through the system. And I think that's the best way to go. With the departmental processing, the basic things that we need are, of course, your guidelines. We need your proposal package, your basic scope, budget justification, the DSR-1, conflict of interest, cost sharing, and those items. The DSR-1 is your key to get through the door from my area and getting over to DSR. That's your signature sheet, and it's where you've received approval and authority from the department and then from the deans and then over to DSR for it to be submitted. Again, I'm going through this quickly. When you have your proposal, the biggest thing I can tell you is read the guidelines, not once, but twice, 3 times. Get a checklist, do an outline, fill in the blanks, and read it over again, and then come to me and have the guidelines and the proposal, and I will go over it and see that everything is in line. There are page limitations on projects, there are budget limitations on projects, there are all kinds of little quirky things that different sponsors will put in. So while we can tell you the basic items are, there are many things that are not basic, and you'll need to make sure you include them, or else this could cause you not to have your project reviewed or funded, or they'll come back and ask for additional information. If I'm not available on a department level, you can check with DSR as well as with our dean's office. Many departments, I would probably say most of them have a departmental grant specialist throughout IFAS. And again, they're going towards the service center for some other areas. There's also guidelines whether you are eligible to submit a proposal. If you're a graduate student, you usually have to have a faculty member sponsor you, be a co-signer off on it, and that because you're not eligible. And there is a list that I have a link there for that you can take a look. You can request permission, but it does have to go through a process. Okay, there it has the list there of graduate students and postdoc employees and some different ones that need to receive approval. Again, this is the anatomy, basically, for proposal, your cover sheet, your body, your budget justification, supplemental docs. The budget components cover a lot of different things. I've just listed a whole group there. The key to a lot of these, especially for new faculty going out or graduate students, is going to be salary and fringe. And that, and one of the things that when we were discussing the abstracts back there was we didn't like the word cost sharing. We tried to avoid that at all costs, but many grants do require cost sharing. And the other one we don't like is voluntary cost sharing. This is the university's indirect cost rate currently, and we're probably going to be going towards a new one. We're under conditional, I think, right now. And that, but you have for on-campus research, off-campus research, so there's different rates. However, again, you go back to the guidelines. The guidelines will tell you if there are limits to the indirect costs for your particular project. And then there's also salary. There's the fringe benefit plan you can take a look at, and if it changes, go again to the link and double check on, and there's a calculator too. Let's see. Graduate students, there's some basic budgeting for your salaries that you can look at, and it changes, so check again, make sure it's current. And there's also, again, you can go by the different FTEs, full-time, part-time, it's quarter-time, half. These are just some ideas for you to look at and go back to. There's also tuition table. If there's a graduate student on a project and they're allowed to be on the project, you would need to put tuition. Some projects do not allow tuition. Let's say there are several USDAs like ARS that do not allow tuition. They also do not allow indirect costs. So again, you go back to the guidelines, but that's the basic tuition for now. I've listed a group of IFAS proposal processing forms in case you need them. You can go in and look at them. We've been developing some tools. They're mainly used for IFAS, but I'm certain some other areas have some similar tools. This is the DSR one. This is the example, and this is your ticket to get through the door from our office area and heading over to DSR. Without this, you're not going to get your project through and submitted. I've listed also some of the DSR numbers, award administration, DSR's research handbook. It's a very good handbook. It's lengthy, and that's so you may want to just pick through and just take a look at the areas that interest you. At the very bottom there's mail logs. I use the mail logs a lot because sometimes you need to find out where a proposal is, and you may need to look at it. It has both for proposals as well as for award administration, so that if your project's coming through for an award, you can check to see where it's at on the list. If it's not there, you want to go back to the agency and look again. And again, the signature authorities. There are several at DSR, and we're also over in Jacksonville, and there's some authorities at the College of Medicine too. And the legal name for the applicant would be the there are many forms on DSR's website too, and you can take a look at it. It's very helpful there. If you don't have an electronic system like I just, you can go and use the PDF. Grants management, that's what Judy's area does more than proposals, except that proposals usually handles contracts, but Judy can get more into that. When you have projects, if you deal with animals, you're going to have IRB approvals. If you're going to be doing interviews or poking humans, taking blood, things like that, then you're going to have IRB, and there's different levels of IRB. That's your human subjects approvals. There are a lot of different things, and again, this is the management area to make sure that you're in compliance with your grant. And it does go on and on. Again, I'm over entomology and nematology, but I also deal with microbiology as well as the Gulf Coast Rec Center. And that I have just gone through this, but I figure that there are more questions. And Judy, if you want to come to, and that, or if you have questions.
Well, I just wanted to mention that all of the DSR folks are excellent resources, and as a PI, Jennifer, I, and Dan, our first line of defense is Vernie. So in our department, we would go to Vernie if we had, or we're thinking about submitting a proposal, we would let her know in advance. The more warning that you can provide to your department person, the better. Because they're there to help you avoid the common mistakes. They're there to work through the minutia of some of these proposals so that you're ultimately successful. If you wait till the nth hour and you submit a proposal, not only are you risking the fact that it may not be well put together on your side, but you're risking that the budget, other issues are also in jeopardy. And while DSR will virtually submit any proposal that comes through, that's their job, is to get the proposal out to the sponsor. You don't want to have a poorly crafted proposal go out, and you don't want to have to address the issues after the fact. You want to make sure that all your ducks are in the row ahead of time. And the best way of doing that is to provide as much time to these folks as possible.
This week, like I mentioned, there's an NIH deadline, so we really have a lot of proposals going through at this time. And when you do the last minute ones, NIH has eliminated a 2-day. If you've made an error, to go back and resubmit it, and that's gone. So PIs really need to get their proposals in early. Question back there?
Does the advice have any difference between when you're looking at a grant that has indirect costs versus one that doesn't have indirect costs, and how involved you should make the school and knowing if they can't do something from the grant?
I don't think that indirect cost, whether the project has it or doesn't have it, same thing with the matching. You have to go by the guidelines. If it's where your project is going to fit in the best, whether it's humanities or the science or NIH, then you have to go by the proposal guidelines and talk with your departmental people. If there's not a departmental grant specialist in your area, you can of course touch base with DSR, and there are a lot of folks over there that can help you. You still have the basics that you need. I've seen some proposals that were 1 page. I mean, it was just a paragraph and $500 or $5,000, and they get funded and submitted in. Then you have ones that are a binder, literally a binder, a proposal, and it may not be as much as the 1-page one for even the amount of money. So there's all different shapes and sizes and all different, responsibilities and items that you add in, but still it comes back to the RFP, your ideas, preparing and having it reviewed in a timely manner, and we do the best we can. But like I said, the budget, the indirect costs, whether it's there or not, we have a whole variety coming through the office always. So one's not favored more than the other.
And it's really important to provide also to your departmental person a draft budget, as much lead time on the budget particularly, because budgets become incredibly complicated and they change, the numbers change all the time. So the earlier you can provide Bernie or your department equivalent a draft budget, they can alert you of issues that you might not be aware of and help you craft that budget so that it meets your bottom line.
Question?
Is the ESR available to everyone, or
primarily it's IFAS. It's preloaded with IFAS departments and that. But the PDF form works just as well. I have a lot of faculty that aren't quite as technical as others, and they don't like the EDSR, and they will go to DSR's website and use the PDF form. It's fine. Any other questions? Yes.
I think I just like to say one thing, and I hadn't said it earlier, but the young lady asked a question about if it has IBC or cost sharing, is it looking at less favorably or more favorably? And one of the things I always like to say, and I've said this to many times, and that is that from your administrative standpoint, your sponsored research standpoint, every grant is just as important as the next grant, whether it's $5,000 or $5 million. To us, to the administrative code, it is still, it's numbers. I always tell a story that I used to say there's no adage, water everywhere and not a drop to drink. Well, I just make the change and I say money everywhere and not a dime to spend. This isn't our money. It's just numbers to us. But we just look at the crossing the T's and dotting the I's. So don't ever feel like if you're going to apply for a grant, don't ever say it's only $5,000. Every grant is just as important as another grant. And it just builds to more funding in the future. But cost sharing, I can see you laugh about it, but it doesn't have any effect on whether you get funded or not, or it doesn't have any effect on how we address it or how we treat it. So,
Everyone's proposal is special. And we try to treat everyone the same in that sense that you are important, your proposal is important, it's there to fund your research. It doesn't mean that in between when I see it submitted and it goes through to the agency and when it gets awarded, then sometimes it can get really complicated, and we understand that. That's part of it. There may be a nasty contract that takes 6 months to a year to be negotiated on your particular project. But then there may be one that's done in a day, and it's just what we do. And that we want to ensure that your project is processed as quickly as we can, because there's another one waiting for my Mattson to be processed. And so, the other thing, I know we have the humanities one, but there are websites that you can go out. DSR has an FYI bulletin if you're not getting it. There are also electronic ones. USDA has an electronic one that you can go in and enter your name and information in, and you'll get some list of some areas that may be of interest to you for some proposals that you can submit to. Just also little local ones too. Some of those little local ones, they do help if you're just starting out to get, a list of proposal funded. I have one, hers was only like $500, but she was working on her dissertation and needed the money for research. Go for it. It's just as good as $5,000, $5 million, depending upon what you need to have done. Some of them may just pay for travel. Some may pay for, a variety of little things. But if you need the money to do your research, your grants, then that's what you need to do, submit. And sometimes faculty, they finish up one project and they start another. And the other thing to keep in mind, many projects can transfer from one university to another as well as to UF. There are a variety of things that can happen. Universities usually will let the PI transfer that project. There are some that don't transfer. There are some that can't be
online. They got some contact information, and that'll get you into the office. I'm a supervisor of the proposal processing section in DSR. I don't usually get to go last. The people that have gone before me have covered a lot of the information that I might give you, so I won't go over that. What I'll do is I'll tell you a little bit about how we operate. It's our job, as Dr. James said, to get the proposal out the door and to make the deadline. And that is our first priority when a proposal comes in. The first thing that I look at is I triage the work as it comes in and distribute it to the ladies in the office. First thing I look at is the deadline. When does it have to be there? Because if your proposal doesn't get there on time, you don't have a chance of getting funded. And it can be a mess, the budget can be wrong, there can be actually missing pieces, but if we don't get it to the agency, we have no choice. They won't fund you. So that is our first priority. We take the proposal as it comes in and make the deadline. Now, what we want is time ahead of time to work with you to resolve any of the issues that may be in that proposal. We try to make sure that we give the agency as good a product as we possibly can. And we have the facilities and the people there to help you do that with a couple of caveats. If you give us enough time, you can't basically walk in today or Monday when we're in the middle of an NIH deadline and say, can you help me put my budget together? We would love to be able to do that for you. We just are not going to have enough time because we're trying to get other proposals out the door to meet the deadline. So if you will work with us, work with your departmental people, your college people, all the resources you have, we can help you put together your proposal. We have access to information that you may need. Sometimes an agency wants a copy of the university's financial report or an IRS letter telling them that you're a tax exempt. That kind of information, we can provide that for you. We can show you where to get it. Lots of resources available to you. Other than getting a proposal out the door, and we are working these days with a number of electronic systems. If you're not aware of the fact that the federal government uses grants.gov, if you've run into that, NSF uses Fastlane. Just about every agency has some sort of online system. NASA has NASA Inspires. They're all different. The not-for-profits, American Heart, American Lung, American Cancer, use Proposal Central. All of those take a little bit of different triage, working with you to get your proposal out the door. Some of those systems require that we actually submit it in DSR. We have to go in, open the package, enter a password, and submit it for you. Other systems are online that are submitted by you. In any event, the proposal should always come through the university for approval and signature. Remember, even though you folks do the work, agencies make the award to the university because we are responsible for managing and ensuring certain compliance issues on your behalf. And we've already talked about some of those, like the IRB and IFA. We have to manage the cost accounting standards, things like that. So be sure that you always run the proposal through the university before it gets sent out, even if it's something that you can send on your own. The second function of my office, besides getting the proposals out the door, is negotiating contracts when an agency comes back and makes an award to the university via that mechanism. There are several mechanisms that an agency can use to fund research here. They can use contracts, they can use purchase orders, they can use cooperative agreements, and anything that is considered a contractual document comes through my office. We negotiate with the agency, get the terms and conditions such that they can live with them and we can live with them, and then we get them signed by an authorized official who is one of our directors. These contracts are legally binding. much different than a proposal. Whereas Dee Dee's Board's Administration Office works more in black and white, where they have to manage the money, you have to have permission to move within budget categories if that's what the agency says. They're a little bit, they have to be a little bit restricted. They can't release your money until you have your IRP or your IFF in place. Proposal processing works very much in the gray. We facilitate getting the proposal out. I'll give you a quick example. We've had several instances where we've had people submit from their home at 10 or 11 o'clock at night a proposal because the faculty member, for some reason, couldn't get it to us ahead of time. We don't encourage that behavior. But we will also submit a proposal at 5 o'clock when it walks in the door, and it's due that day. We were hustling. Actually, just last night, we had a proposal coming over, and they told us it was due at 5 o'clock. We were getting a little worried by 5 minutes till 5. We hadn't seen it. Finally, it showed up in our email, only to find out that it wasn't due until 11:59 last night. So there were 3 of us left in the office after 5. All 3 of us were looking at the proposal, trying to give it a very quick once-over to make sure that we could catch whatever we could fix at that last minute. Realized that the budget had been incorrectly calculated, but there was nothing we could do about it, but we went ahead and submitted it. So we made the deadline. So that's our job. We get it out the door. We've even had ladies get a grants.gov package. This is mostly like NIH. Came in the door about quarter till the graduate student was working on it for their faculty member. It had been through a number of hands, everybody adding their piece to it, and by the time it got over, whoever was working on it, please call NIH and beg and say, I can't imagine what happened to my proposal. I've lost some of my documents.